Pam Bondi didn't just walk into Congress. She walked straight into the line of fire. What was supposed to be a simple hearing turned into a national moment of silence, the kind that tells you more than words ever could. Because when America's top law enforcement officer can't answer a basic legal question, it's not confusion, it's fear. And that fear speaks volumes. The question was simple. Do presidential pardons cover new crimes? Not political crimes, not partisan hypotheticals, just crimes committed after the pardon was issued. A straightforward legal question. But the second Bondi was asked, everything changed. Her posture stiffened, her answers shifted, and within seconds, the hearing room turned into a stage for political deflection. Instead of giving a clear answer, she brought up something no one had asked about.
In 2024, the U.S. Capitol Police identified and received nearly 9,500 concerning statements or threats against members. Federal prosecutors have only secured 8 convictions so far, and the heightened threat environment demands an all-hands-on-deck approach. Will you commit to assigning an assistant U.S. attorney or a special assistant U.S. attorney in each of the 94 federal districts to, at least on a part-time basis, investigate and prosecute threats against members of Congress?
So thank you for bringing that up, and I take that very seriously. Not only what happened in Minnesota was horrible. I've spoken to Keith Ellison. I've spoken to Amy Klobuchar about that. It's horrible. We are involved in that. The FBI was involved. Our U.S. attorneys are involved. Many of these are district to district. So the way we're doing that is, I will tell you, my National Security Division is involved in all of those and assisting in those. We meet every single morning and we discuss that. But many of those, Minnesota, will be handled in the state in which it happened. Another one is
So, may
Governor, I'm sorry if I can keep going. I'm sorry. I don't mean
Quickly,
to
though.
I filibuster. Governor Shapiro and what happened in Pennsylvania with Governor Shapiro. I've spoken to Governor Shapiro. We are working hand in hand, our U.S. attorney with the district attorney there, hand in hand, just like in Minnesota. I made sure our U.S. attorney and our district attorneys there were working hand in hand. Political party doesn't matter when something like this happens. And I also want to make sure all members of Congress are safe as well.
Okay, and I would reiterate, Chairman Stile and I think Chairman Stile and I agree that at least a part-time in each of the 94 districts would be appropriate. Let me change topics for just a moment.
I'm really quick on that. Yes, we're doing that through our National Security Division, so I think that's already in the works, and I would be glad to meet with you in a secure facility to talk about that.
Very good, thank you. Continuing, in addition to my role here, the committee that I serve on as an authorizer oversees Capitol security as well as federal elections, so I'm closely following the aftermath of January 6th. Recently, several defendants who received presidential pardons related to that day are now arguing in court that the pardon covers crimes like, for instance, illegal firearm possession discovered in a search of an individual's home in California months after January 6th. What's your position on whether the pardons cover these separate offenses?
The pardon power rests with the president, not the Department of Justice, and some of that is pending litigation, and I cannot discuss pending litigation.
Well, I'm not asking you about who has the right to a pardon. I think as the Department of Justice in February wrote, the pardon is an act of grace which removes the punishment from a crime a person has committed. It further said, in its effect, the granting of a pardon is in no sense the overturning of a judgment of conviction. It is an executive action that mitigates or sets aside punishment. So as the chief law enforcement officer, what's your opinion, not the president's power of whether he can offer a pardon, that's pretty clear in the Constitution, but for crimes committed unrelated to January 6th, would you suggest that the pardons would cover activities or crimes potentially committed outside of that by the same person?
Well, I don't know if you're referring to Joe Biden pardoning his son after he said he would not pardon Hunter Biden, or the
No, I actually
commutation
referred
of
to
all
January 6th. I'm sorry.
all the sentences that the people that were on death row. I've met with those families.
No,
all of those sentences were commuted. I'm not going to comment on pardons on either side of the aisle.
So, well, I'm not asking about either side. I'm asking, you're the chief law enforcement officer in the United States. You have a responsibility directly, but you swore an oath to the Constitution, not the president. Want to know what your views are on the extent to which pardons cover potential crimes committed by individuals who've been pardoned but unrelated to January 6th?
Do you mean the ones that were done by the auto pen? I'm not going to discuss
right.
anything that
Mr.
could be
Chairman,
or not.
Hunter Biden, death row commutations, and even autopen signatures. It wasn't just off topic, it was a calculated dodge, a diversion from a question that could expose just how far political loyalty now reaches inside the Department of Justice. Because this wasn't about one family or one case. It was about whether the law still means the same thing for everyone. The congressman pressed again. He reminded her she'd sworn an oath, not to a person, not to a party, but to the Constitution itself. But still, no answer. She pivoted, she stalled, and every second of silence felt heavier than the last. Viewers watching from home could see it. The subtle smile, the rehearsed calm. But behind it all, something deeper was happening. The country's top legal officer was refusing to defend the one thing she's supposed to stand for, the rule of law. And that's where the story begins to twist. Because this wasn't just an awkward exchange, it was a legal earthquake. The entire concept of presidential pardon power has limits. It's meant to forgive a past crime, not erase a future one. But Bondi's silence created a dangerous ambiguity. If a person can be pardoned for January 6th and then later claim that same pardon shields them from an unrelated offense, like illegal firearm possession months later, that's not just stretching the law. That's ripping it apart. Congress wasn't asking for political theater. They were asking for legal clarity, a boundary, a definition. But Bondi refused to draw the line. She spoke of compassion, of fairness, of bipartisan restraint, everything except the actual law. It was as if every sentence was designed to sound careful, but say nothing. And that's what made it so chilling. Because the absence of an answer can be more revealing than a lie. Behind that silence is a question no one wants to ask out loud. Is the Justice Department still independent, or has it become just another shield for those in power? When the Attorney General won't commit to enforcing the law equally, it tells every future official that accountability is negotiable. That if you stand close enough to power, the rules don't apply. And let's be clear, this isn't just about one administration or one scandal. This is about every American who believes in equal justice. The idea that your title, your money, or your political connections shouldn't determine whether you face consequences. Bondi's refusal to speak wasn't just disrespectful to Congress. It was an insult to that idea. Think about what that hearing revealed. Every time she was asked to clarify, she shifted the topic. Every time a legal principle was mentioned, she replied with a political talking point. It's like watching a magician wave one hand while hiding the truth with the other. She mentioned tragedies in Minnesota and Pennsylvania, offered sympathy, and invoked working hand in hand with governors. But none of that had anything to do with the question. The audience knew it. The congressman knew it. And yet, the deflection continued. This is how power hides. Not by shouting, but by changing the subject. When leaders can't answer, they distract. When they can't justify, they deflect. And in that room, you could feel the frustration building. You swore an oath to the Constitution, the congressman said again. But by then, it didn't matter. The hearing had become theater, a performance where truth was the casualty. That Bondi's handling of that moment didn't just expose her hesitation. It exposed the dangerous comfort of political power. She wasn't protecting the law. She was protecting her position. And that's the real scandal. Because when justice becomes conditional, democracy becomes fragile. Here's why this matters. The pardon power was never meant to be limitless. It's an act of mercy, not immunity. A president can forgive, but they can't erase future wrongdoing. Every constitutional scholar, every Justice Department memo, every precedent says the same thing. Yet when the nation's top law enforcer refuses to reaffirm that principle, she effectively leaves the door open for abuse. Imagine what that means going forward. A future leader could grant broad pardons for one event, and those same individuals could claim permanent protection, free to commit new crimes without fear of consequence. That's not hypothetical. It's the logical outcome of silence. And in that silence, the law starts to fade. Congress has a constitutional duty to ask hard questions. Oversight isn't an attack, it's a safeguard. When Bondi refused to engage, she wasn't just dodging political opponents. She was dodging accountability itself. And accountability is the backbone of justice. Without it, the system collapses under its own weight. Some viewers may argue, Maybe she couldn't speak because of ongoing litigation. But listen closely. That's not what she said. She didn't cite a pending case. She didn't explain legal restrictions. She just deflected to politics, to unrelated issues, to anything but the question. And that tells you this wasn't about legal caution. It was about narrative control. The truth is, this hearing wasn't a debate about one person's behavior. It was a test of transparency, of responsibility, and of the department's commitment to law over loyalty. And that test was failed in real time, on live television, before the entire country. Even members of Congress noticed it. One called her out directly, saying her refusal to answer was the height of filibustering. That wasn't partisan outrage. That was exasperation. Because when the Attorney General of the United States treats congressional oversight like a political interview, it sends a message. The law bends when power demands it. The danger here isn't just legal, it's cultural. Every time the public sees a powerful figure dodge questions without consequence, cynicism grows. People stop believing justice is possible. They start believing everything is political. And when that belief takes root, trust in institutions crumbles. That's how democracies weaken, not overnight, but one unchallenged silence at a time. Pam Bondi could have taken that moment to restore faith. She could have reaffirmed that no one, regardless of politics or connections, is above the law. Instead, she chose ambiguity. She chose comfort over clarity. And that choice will echo, because every future attorney general, every prosecutor, every citizen watching learned something that day. That silence can protect power better than any argument ever could. But there's still one thing no deflection can hide. The truth always finds its way out. Whether through whistleblowers, journalists, or congressional investigations, the facts eventually surface. And when they do, silence will no longer be an option. Bondi's refusal to answer wasn't just a missed opportunity, it was a warning. A warning that even the people sworn to protect the Constitution can forget who they serve. And when that happens, it's up to the public, to all of us, to remind them, because justice isn't self-sustaining. It needs voices willing to question, to challenge, to demand more. That's how systems survive. That's how democracies endured. So if you're watching this, and you believe in accountability, don't let this moment fade. Don't let silence win. The truth doesn't disappear just because those in power refuse to speak it. It waits, and it always returns. That if you want to keep seeing real stories that cut through the noise, hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share it so more people can see what's really happening inside the halls of power. The more we pay attention, the harder it becomes for them to look away. Stay curious, stay aware, and stay loud. Because that's the only way truth survives.